So welcome to Inspired Perspectives. Today my guest is Lisa Lipsett. She has a doctorate in transformational education, and she's here to tell us, or rather I'm with her, for her to tell us about her books and to show us a few of the art projects that she'll be putting in an upcoming exhibition. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, Cornelia.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to start with your book, first of all. You have one book that's been published for a decade now?
2009.
2009, and then you're working on another one.
I am. Yeah, sort of a follow-up. So this first book, Beauty Muse, Painting in Communion
Let's hold it over here so
Okay.
that people can see it if they end up wanting a copy for
I
themselves.
rest it on my dog, Harriet, my companion. The book is called Beauty Muse, Painting in Communion with Nature. And I wrote it as an inspiration for people who are curious about painting as an art form, but even more broadly, people who are curious about their creativity and were interested in exploring it.
So what brought you to writing the book?
Wow.
How did that happen?
About 20 years ago, I started playing with journaling as a way to just unpack myself a little bit. I hadn't really done anything like that before. I was very much a sciencey kind of girl. And journaling led me to painting feelings. So I started by sort of painting journaling. I would write my morning pages in the Julia Cameron kind of way, in the artist's way. And then pick a phrase or pick an emotion or a thought, something that kind of had some juice to it. And I closed my eyes to choose the colors on a watercolor set and simply painted spontaneously. And over time, I started to understand my own colors and my own forms and my own patterns and start to see them shift and change and understand that that was a language, kind of not yet speech-ripe language. Those things that I was feeling and getting a sense of in myself had a visual presence that I found really compelling. So I began to do that.
Now, did you find that, and we can probably free your arm now, did you find that, you were using the same colors? Like was there a pattern either to your shapes or to your colors?
There was a pattern, absolutely. There were certain colors I avoided. There were certain patterns. If I was feeling anxious, I would tend to do very small, very overworked shapes, lots of grids of things where I was organizing them into little areas, like in shoe boxes, or the way the cutlery drawer is organized. Paintings had that quality. There were other ones that were super flowy, where color was kind of swooshing across the page. There wasn't much shape, but there was this sense of kind of looseness and flow. And this developed into an impulse that I had one day to paint the way a vase of tulips felt instead of the way it looked. So it started with myself, and exploring my own feelings, giving color and form, and it just shifted one day where I painted the feeling of being connected to the tulips. Not that I was intuiting, not that I was thinking into how they felt. I was feeling the connection to them, and then simply in the same way spontaneously painting. And I love that.
So this was a pivotal point for you.
That was a very big shift for me. And that has really led to everything that I do now, and helping other people to shift into that place of feeling connection with shadows and patterns and how things smell and what we hear and the texture of things.
So let's go back to how the Beauty Muse was created. So how did that book come from the vase of tulips?
Well, the vase of tulips was a pivotal story and a pivotal experience for me. And the book is an interweaving of things to try, inspiring activities and art encounters to try, quotes from people interested in deep ecology, eco-psychology, the human-nature relationship, as well as narrative, sort of storytelling about how I came to do this work. It was a melding. And I originally wrote a doctoral thesis It was called On Speaking Terms Again, Transformative Experiences of Artful Earth Connection. And there's a lot of amazing material in there. And it's a thesis. And, you know,
not something many people are going to pick up and read. Oh.
Yeah, so I really felt it was, that was 2001, and I really felt it was important to take that body of work and distill it and titrate it into something that was really accessible and inspiring for anybody who just wants to open a book and look for some ideas.
So you're and I know you and I have talked over the years, and I'm always interested in the way you have this fundamental belief in that we can all create, and that in fact we should all create.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, it's a visceral understanding and truth almost. I believe it because I've experienced it in myself and continue to be wowed by it in myself. And honestly, I have not found anybody that I worked with who can't make that shift. It's about understanding what our own recipe is for connecting in to the creative flow. And really, I've come to see it as a shift, and that the talent is in how to make the shift. And the tools that I offer people, I think, help them to find what shifts them most quickly and easily and with great consistency.
So what's interesting as I hear you say that sentence is that you describe the talent not as the marks people might make on paper or the songs they might sing or what other form of creative expression, but you describe the talent is as part of that, as the ability to shift.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
And in a way, neuroscience is starting to catch up with us a little bit. So the experiential creative is starting to now be mirrored in what we're seeing in MRIs, for example, where jazz musicians show activity from the prefrontal lobe, where we have our kind of managing, planning functioning, which we need, to a place that is back further, that is more spontaneous, connected in, easygoing, improvisational, in the moment. And honestly, it's that shift, how to recognize when we're in that planning place and how to shift to the creative part of our being.
So you run workshops now, teaching people how to do that.
Workshops. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I love working.
You love that?
I love that. I love working with people who come to me and say, I can't create anything. I don't have a creative bone in my body. I am scared. Do you know? It's a very vulnerable thing for adults often, sometimes very accomplished professional adults, to shift into another way of being in an art kind of environment, and they do say, I'm scared and I don't think I can do this.
We have these, we call the word art, you know, and we as if art is something that's in a museum, you know, art, and only in a museum. And so our culture has made it something that it's difficult for, if we're lay artists, to simply pick up and do some form of creative activity. There's always an apology almost that we sort of state, you know, oh, you know, I can't, or I shouldn't, or I'm timid. And yet when we do,
qualifier,
when we do, it's, well, we just have so much fun.
We do, and it puts more of our capacity for full living online available to us.
Yes.
It's a way to know.
Yeah.
Right? We're starting to now understand that it's a way to be fully alive and healthy in ourselves, less depressed, less anxious, more connected in. I teach a lot in the forest or in the garden, and that's the other piece, I think, that holds the space for real creative flow, is someplace in nature where our bodies are on the ground, where we can improvise and be spontaneous with what's presented, shadows, winds, the sounds, and it's rejuvenating for us.
So
we need that.
You know, what's interesting, as you speak, the other thing that comes up for me and that I believe so strongly is that piece around the creative expression also accessing a part of our own, you know, whether we call it our subconscious and letting it bubble up, but information in ourselves that we haven't quite yet fully accepted in our conscious mind. And that likewise, getting out in nature, right? Being able to have ourselves more fully grounded.
Yeah, there's definitely there. Of course, we know there's a therapeutic aspect to like we do with dreams, having an ability to be able to dialogue with our imagery, give voice to different aspects of ourselves, uncover layers of ourselves that can be a bit shy, a bit hidden, a bit without the light shone on them. I also see the resulting images as being kind of postcards of an experience. So they are a place where I make marks on a page, and then I'll step back and I'll see things. There's a lost and found kind of quality. Yes. So that's the finding the image.
Is that part of your workshops too?
Very much, yes. So I teach people.
What would someone expect if they came to a workshop?
They'd expect playfulness. They could expect playfulness and a community of other creatives who are interested in sharing. They can also expect that they would learn how to shift into flow, painting with flow. We do a lot of activities with our eyes closed as we kind of feel into that flow, and then opening our eyes and responding to what's there with line, pulling out shape. And at the same time, I also teach starting with those lines and shapes, looking, drawing lines, listening, drawing what we're hearing as we're listening, and then adding flow to that by adding background and color.
So going both directions.
Both directions into the middle. So you learn how to be really loose, how to bring it into tightness and refinement, how to start with refinement and then make it really loose.
And you do this with both adults and children?
I do, yes.
So you're part of the regular school system?
I have BC Arts Council grants and Artists in the Classroom grants locally, and I've actually had grants with organizations that are supporting nature connections. So I come at it from the nature connection. Art is a way to connect to nature, but also the art connection piece, teaching it in a natural way. So I get funding that way. So in the elementary schools, but not directly in the classroom, because I find it much more enlivening and generative when I'm doing it outside.
Absolutely.
And then with adults, I teach outside in the parks and out of my studio. I have a garden here.
If someone was interested in one of your courses, what website would they go to as an adult?
The best place to go is the creativebynature.org website.
Okay.
Yeah, or naturepaint.ca is the other one.
Tell us about your second book, Lisa. You have another book that's underway, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because it's going to be very visual. It's going to be called because I don't know if it's going to be called this.
You're not sure? What's the working title? I mean, that's probably
Nature Paint Playbook.
Okay, yeah.
I really want something that people can take with them into the forest or into a garden. I envision cards that are sort of prompts for people. It's worked around the elements: earth, air, fire, and water. It's
why did you go there?
Because I find that inspiring. I'm interested in my own kind of elemental way of being, my light airiness.
There's something really primal about that too,
primal.
Isn't it? It really gets us out of our head and makes us human in an animal and consciousness simple kind of way.
I feel that.
Yeah.
But the first quarter of the book helps people understand the method that I use, and I call it the Creative by Nature Art Method. And
you've kind of perfected this.
I have, and it's super distilled, really straightforward, really simple. A practice that you could do every day. Very, very grounding. There's certain elements to it. One of them is using both of your hands as a way to balance. It's whole brain painting.
So that
drawing.
Gets us out of our head, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does, and gets the wholeness of ourselves together. Also, a lot of the work is done with our eyes closed. To me, there was a lot of grasping in my eyes, a lot of planning, a lot of judgment. And I find and I still do this, when I close my eyes and I go into my hands, I'm in connection.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's activities that involve eyes closed, both hands, drawing and painting, kind of balanced, opening the eyes after something has been created as a way to respond.
So there's some similar activities as your first book, but you've gone further. Is
I've
that
gone
what I'm
deeper.
hearing?
Yes, my first book really had a good stream of narrative around how I came to do what I do.
Understanding how that transformation happens within us, because each of our stories is a model for. We learn from each other's stories.
That's right.
About transformation.
And I felt that was helpful for people.
Oh,
I wanted it to be helpful
absolutely.
because I find it inspiring when I read other people's stories about how they came to do what they're doing. It's not a mystery. I get the messiness of it. The 2 steps forward, 1 step back quality. The dark night in the forest, not sure where it's all going. Is this all worth it? I'm just making a mess.
Well, it gives us permission, doesn't it, to have the messiness in our own lives. It really does. When we hear it, that it's part of other people's.
And understanding that messiness as like a primordial pool of possibility. I really see it that way now. And that it's a stage that I continually go through as I'm becoming a little bit more crystallized, a little bit more of who I'm meant to be. As a little bit more comes on top, I need to understand what that part of myself is, and then I need to see how it fits with everything else. And that stage where it's not quite fitting has a bit of tension to it and possibility, and that needs to be held in that messiness, and then it bursts forth.
Now I find in my life that I visit that messy space in a cycle, like as I'm going through different changes, that there will be a very uncomfortable, and then there's a tension that builds.
That's
there's
energy,
a tension and a frustration, and if I can stay with that, then there's a breakthrough and that was obvious. And yet the space before that, not comfortable.
That's right.
So you've taken people through that, and
so in my first book,
comfortable.
It's very, very clear. My first book, my second book is really a how-to manual.
When will it be published? Do you have a sense?
I'm thinking a year's time. It'll be ready to go.
Beautiful.
I just need to distill it a little bit.
And you till then, if people want to check in on a workshop, they could still easily do that. Summer times you run them?
I'm starting a new series this fall, and on my website there are videos. There's some articles. Some of those articles are being reworked to put in my book, so you can get a taste. There's maybe 10 different PDFs on my website that focus on, there's one on shadows, there's one on working with sound, there's one about artist contemplation. You'll get a really good smattering.
Nice resources.
Introduction to the Created by Nature art method is on my website as well, and the book is pulling all these pieces together into one place.
Wonderful.
So you can go to the website and find all kinds of things.
So before we go over to your artwork, because you're going to be in you show regularly.
I do,
And I know I was at one of your shows. Well, it seems like it was just a couple of weeks ago.
It was, Adoration.
And you have another one coming up?
I do, in another 2 weeks. So it's at the Salt Spring Gallery, both of these shows. And lately I've been really interested in the elements, as I was saying before, and how they come together in one place, that sense of balance with earth, air, fire, and water. I really love ancient walls that have been colored with natural pigments. I love seeing the history in a wall. I love seeing the more recent layers kind of surfaced with the deep, deep, deep. I love seeing things bubble up from a deep layer. I love that dance between the inner and the outer, and getting hints of things coming up.
Let's take a look then.
So
Lisa, tell us about, this is one of the images for the new show.
This is the new show. Is called Bella, inspired moments in France and Italy.
Is this based on your own travels?
It is. Yes. The show is with Amy Melius, photographer on Salt Spring, and Barb Siegele, who's a painter, mixed media painter as well. And these images are brand new, And I have them up as a way to live with them a little bit, to understand what they're trying to become. And I do that as part of my process.
So what I hear you saying then is that these maybe have evolved even more.
Yeah, and
shifted.
they may still. I've got 2 weeks left, and often things come together the week before. It's the power of a deadline. And this painting, I think, is getting to the completion place very much. And to me, it's the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, that are present all the time. Whether we're in nature, whether we're in an old village, whether we're in a cave.
Or in an office tower.
Or in an office tower, it is part of who we are, those elements and the balance of them. My fascination, what really inspires me, is the layers, the timeless layers. In Europe, of course, you can see that in real time, in a big city where you can see old walls that are peeling and you can see the layers below.
So is it the timeless layers of what it is to be human, and what it is to see as a human on the planet?
It is, and that ongoing has always been there, the relationship between humans and making art. In particular for me, it's mark making, visual art, painting and drawing. So I visited caves in the Dordogne in France and saw some of the early drawings and paintings that were done with raw pigments in those caves. And to me, that's part of the fascination. And then we visited, of course, museums, visited Pompeii to see early frescoes, how those early drawings in caves evolved to wall decoration in people's homes. And then how those have translated to the walls of the cities now, with graffiti sometimes, the kind of modern rendition of people talking to each other and sharing their experience in the world on the walls. So to me, that's the inspiration. There's a tactile quality to these walls as well. So to me, that's these kinds of layers and textures, the history that's coming through the surface.
So is that in part how you feel about what it is to be human then?
It is very much.
Does it get you in, does painting this way get you in touch with that layered aspect of our humanity and our ancestors?
Absolutely, yes. Because
and the marks that come through.
The marks that come through.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we don't know it, but those marks are coming through from generations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And so it's making space for those in real time. So there's kind of a modern response to it. I am a person in this place and time, and there's a holding space for that which is still lingering, which is still there, traces of what was there before.
Now, the first time in my life I thought of cave marks as akin to graffiti, as I heard you speaking now, and I had never actually put those two together, but what an interesting thought.
Well, there's a commentary. There's also a sacredness. I do understand the cave marks as being almost akin to accessing another way to know in a chapel-like environment, going into a space that's not the everyday place, and having a way to commune with that which is, not quite tangible, but it's a felt presence.
So that, and I mean, that is the essence of, at least for me, when I feel into creativity, it's something that is emerging, and that is a verb, not a noun.
It's very much a verb.
And what a gift to touch that for each of us in whatever way we touch it.
Yeah, and when we do touch it, we get that juice from it. In ourselves, when we touch into ourselves, we get that juice, and when we touch into the timelessness of people who've made art, and we've always done it, we get juice from that timelessness. It helps us to understand ourselves in a broader perspective. And to me, I find that very soothing. I find that very grounding. I find that very hopeful in a way, that there's this kind of line, this tether that holds me to that holds us all to that's available every day. Anywhere, anytime.
Yes, beautiful.
I really do believe that.
Now you wanted to show us a couple of other paintings too?
Yeah, so I'm enjoying this because this is a painting that's kind of holding the complexity that I think all of these paintings are going to kind of feed off of in a way. I'm enjoying this one because, in part, I'm loving pink. I really, really enjoy that soft, fleshy color, the earthiness, and the golden egg. And a lot of my images lately have had this bubbling up of an eggy shape. And
What does it feel like for you?
oh, it feels very grounded and warm, and of course earthy, but also uplifting and soft and soothing in a way. I'm also really enjoying this kind of crisp circularity that's behind
I can
there.
hold this for you, and you
got
can.
it. It's a little
Let's
wet.
just see
so
that
I'm
we've
working
got
on
it. Yeah.
So I'm loving this kind of circle, this crispness that's happening to me. There's a sacredness to that. There's a kind of a looking upward, maybe not in the traditional heaven
And
sort
we've
of way.
all done. We always look up for inspiration,
always
don't
look
we?
up.
It's
That
so-
lightness.
What
What's-
is that? Isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
it is physical.
It is.
It's not just intellectual.
Oh yeah, it's very physical. It's that wanting to, that expansiveness. So to me, there's that happening there. I'm liking all these little areas too. I like when
And
the
is this
colours come through.
all oil, or is it a combination?
It's oil, cold wax, layer of acrylic, oil pastel, and chalk pastel. A little bit of graphite. It's kind of I'm a what some of my artist friends call a no holds barred artist. I use cold wax as the way to kind of hold all different
All
kinds of
that.
materials that normally wouldn't go together. And maybe that's part of the process for me, is taking pieces that normally wouldn't go together and putting them into some kind of crystallized form.
So
I work it
is
out.
that analogous in any other aspect of your personal view or worldview?
Holding of difference, holding of oppositional difference is a big part of it. So not here, not there, not black, not white, but gray. As part of that, what I was saying before, that primordial melting pot where everything is welcome. It's kind of, oh, this too. And then how to hold all those pieces and have them distill into something that's, larger than the component
So there
parts,
must be a way in which doing art for you, does it magnify the ability to hold
very
space
much.
in that way?
Yeah, and to me, the practice of painting creates patience in that process. Sort of what you were talking about holding that place when things don't seem to go together. That can be a little uncomfortable, because there's a need to know, and there's a need to have it kind of figured out a little bit. I have, anyways. I think many of us do. And how to be patient, knowing that no, not yet ready. It's not fully baked, not fully ready.
Do you find that with your clients too? With the
Oh,
people
very
who come
much.
to do workshops, do they
very much.
do they find that from that transition from the day they walk in to the day they finish that they have more of that capability
I think so.
to not need to know instantly?
Yeah.
I'm moving my body
Yeah, you
because
are,
it's
yeah.
a very, it's sort of
Yeah.
a very physical
It is.
sense to
Yeah.
hold something and not need to know. Yeah.
It's a spaciousness. And honestly, for me, when it crystallizes, it's not a thought. It's a visceral rightness, and a lot of that feeling is a fire, a spaciousness, a juiciness, a clarity. The thinking part becomes clear, and a renewed faith. And this process really does lead to a new, fresh outcome each time.
And it's true in other areas of our life, isn't it? I mean, as you
much, yeah.
describe that, I have to think how true that is for, even a writing project or a cooking
Absolutely.
project or just a gardening project,
Yeah.
like other things that we are professional, building a building, building a whatever, that there is, it's a felt sense of when something is fully complete. And that's the real aha.
It is the real aha, and that takes patience. I find it gets easier for myself, and I think it gets easier for people once they've had a couple of rounds of it. Then they start to know, okay, it's gonna come.
So the big takeaway isn't necessarily getting comfortable with making marks. The big takeaway, as you describe it, is something much bigger that people will receive.
It's the process to me. It's the practice of doing it. Ideally, a daily kind of practice, and I encourage people to do that. And it's a wider time span.
So it's back to that way that you use the word talent. You use the word talent as holding that process as opposed to
That's right.
the outcome.
That's right. Keeping our attention on that, bringing our attention back to that in a loving way, understanding that that's what it takes. That's the discipline of it, and the talent is, how can you stay with it as well when you're, when everything in you wants to just run away or scurry away or distract or have lots of judgment about it. That's the talent. How do you bring yourself back to it in a loving way? Carry on, let it go again, start again the next day, keep it moving. Yeah.
So Lisa, you just made a comment that stood out for me, and it was letting go of something beautiful to birth something precious.
Yeah. Painting has taught me that, and partly it's through taking paintings that are old and kind of didn't feel finished, but are kind of percolating. And I have some paintings I worked on that have not been worked on for maybe 15, 20 years, honestly. And I'll simply spontaneously respond to what's there, and then maybe scrape down to pull out a little bit of that beauty, but understand that beauty is not the conclusion, it's not the finished product.
And we have to do that with our lives, don't we?
We have to keep doing that. Hold on to those precious pieces.
And release something that may look perfect and may look one phase of our life when it comes to completion, and then opening up to the next phase of our life that inevitably will have kernels that are more precious.
To me, that's the letting go, isn't it? Right? So really honoring, really holding as precious in the moment what was created, but knowing that beauty has a whole other life ahead of it. If I can just let go, then something even more precious, the fullness of it, then can come alive.
So this is your table.
This is my table.
I'm going to bring, and you have one of these paintings that you're just in the midst of doing that
I'm
with.
just letting it stew a little and see if I think it's ready to go.
So you were just saying that on the side you can see a totally different painting.
Yeah, so there's another painting here, and actually the one on the wall's got a lot too, but you can get a little hint of it, and you can see what's coming through in this painting here. So this is part of that beauty, this beautiful pink that's coming through now in the next layer. This is a little bit of that as well. But I have a love affair with that deep, deep blue right now, the indigo, which is powdered flower, basically, the indigo flower that people use for dyeing. It's like suede. I love the texture of it. And then,
so you've had to release a painting that was there before, something finished and perfect.
It was even strung to be held this way. So it's new perspective, new understanding. Yeah, and I love where it's going.
I love where it's going too.
It's just juicy and yummy and
loving where it's going. Eh?
Yeah,
loving where it's going.
Loving where it's going and being okay with that.
Yeah.
And it's a dance, it's like a negotiation, because I like anybody, I have resistance. It's risky.
Yeah, of course. Every time we change, there's there's risk involved.
Trust it, and then to get to the place where I just love it, then I know that's the right choice.
It's beautiful. Yeah. So thank you for inviting us here today.
Thank you, Cornelia. It's a real pleasure.
Share time with you and
thank you.
See what you're working on now, the show that you're working on, and to hear about your books.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy.
Well, it's wonderful to see that you've chosen to let your inspiration be active and constant. Yeah.
Thank you.